So this week, Tesla announced it purchased $1.5 billion of the cryptocurrency Bitcoin. The company even hinted that customers may soon have the option to pay for their cars using Bitcoin. Uh, yeah. Welcome to 2021, where nothing makes sense anymore. I'm Jason Cipriani with Jason Perlow, and on this episode of Jason Squared, the other Jason is going to try to explain crypto and blockchain to me, as well as our listeners and viewers. Perlow, all I have to say for this episode is good luck, man.
Yeah, we're two new nerds talking tech for a good reason, but this is way into the deep nerd zone. So
Yeah, you get a giant rabbit hole and just jump down into it, and that's where we're at with this one.
that's yeah. So Jason, cryptocurrency and blockchain, they're related technologies
Right.
that are often confused with each other, and they're really difficult concepts to understand. So I'm gonna try to do my best. I'm not an expert at either of these things. I can tell you this: I don't own any cryptocurrency, and I don't directly utilize any systems to my knowledge that use blockchain. But that doesn't mean I might not do so in the future.
Right.
What about you?
So I've dabbled. I shouldn't act like I know nothing about crypto and blockchain. Like I said, I've dabbled a bit. I bought some Bitcoin years ago. I think when it first spiked to 18,000 from like 6,000, when it had its first big push and hit 5 digits or whatever it was. I put $100 in, it dipped back down. I got scared. I took my money out.
Yeah.
I should have left it in. I mean, it was only $100. It's not like I'm a big time
Right.
investor or anything. A few weeks ago when Dogecoin started taking off, I logged into Robinhood during the whole game stonk thing
Yeah.
and found $20 I had in my account from 2015. So I put it in Dogecoin. I think I'm sitting at around $36, $37. I checked it this morning after Elon Musk's latest tweet because he keeps
Yeah.
pumping it. And, as you can tell, I am a very, very aggressive investor with these large amounts of money I'm putting into it. But my only other experience after that, I'm not really a large investor, by the way. My only experience after that is I started messing around with mining over the weekend, literally just in the last couple of days.
Yeah.
Mostly out of curiosity. I've had friends telling me for years to do it. It's profitable. You can make money. And so I've been mining Ethereum. I think that's how you say it for
Yeah.
the last couple of days. And I've made, I don't know, $12 is what the payout is in Bitcoin.
All right.
But
All right. All right.
but over a month, over the course of the year, that's a few $1,000s that you don't have to do anything for except for cover the cost of electricity. So,
All right.
I'm good with that. So while I have a basic understanding of crypto and a little, like very small amounts of money involved in it, what I really want to know and learn about is, the various use cases for the digital currency, but also more importantly about blockchain and what kind of impact it'll have on businesses, enterprise, our day-to-day
Sure.
lives, that kind of stuff.
Yeah. So, Jason, before we go into like what cryptocurrency is and all that stuff, what the technology behind Bitcoin is, we should really explain what blockchain is, right? Because
Yeah.
it's the foundational technology used by various cryptocurrencies such as Bitcoin and Dogecoin and Ethereum, right? So, in its simplest form, okay, a blockchain is a database, right? Now,
Yeah.
with a traditional database, information is stored in fields with rows and columns, and they're indexed, for fast retrieval. And we know that these fields can be things like, name, address, phone number, and it may be pointers to things like multimedia files, like, video files or images or audio, right? We interact with Apple Music, we interact with Netflix. Those are all use databases that point to those types of what we call the blob data structures. Now,
Yeah, makes sense.
yeah. Now, so fields in a traditional database, right, can be updated when they're changed. So when you use stuff like Facebook and Instagram, and you change a post or put in like new tags for something or mark the location, you're replying to someone's comment on a post, you're interacting with the traditional database, whether you know it or not, right? But with blockchain, okay, the data is organized in a completely different way. Okay, so data is collected what they call blocks, and they're really just groups of information. So any information that follows the first block, right, is compiled into a newly formed block, and then they get added to that chain, right? So that information is sequential and continues to build on each other, right, as new information is added to that chain. Now,
Sure.
the most important concept behind this is that it creates a completely irreversible timeline of this information when this database is decentralized across, thousands and thousands of computers. Every single block of data is fingerprinted with this timeline. It cannot be changed, so it's got an exact timestamp of when it's added to that timeline, right? So
Yeah, makes sense.
Right. So most blockchain systems, okay, are organized in a decentralized fashion. So that's to say that the computers that process these transactions are distributed all around the world, right? So
Which is
in the
kind
case,
of, I know this is sidelining you here, but
Yeah,
that's
yeah,
when
yeah.
people are mining crypto. That you're right. That's what they're doing. It's a decentralized. They're adding to the blockchain, verifying stuff on the blockchain, but it's computers all over the globe. It's some people rent out server farms, so it's decentralized. That's a main takeaway here. It's not in one location. It's all over.
Right. So in the case of something like, a cryptocurrency, a transaction's entered at a client computer, right?
Yep.
From someone that's connected to that blockchain. Then that transaction's transmitted over to the network of all these peer-to-peer connected systems, which are known as nodes, right? And all these nodes then collectively solve a series of equations, right, to validate that transaction. And that's where the crypto aspect, it's cryptography, it's encrypted, it's an algorithm that's being played out across all these systems, and they suddenly, when they all agree to each other, then that block is then compiled and added, right? Now, a blockchain can have as few dozen of nodes on a network to as much as 10,000 nodes, or potentially more, which is something like Bitcoin has like 10,000 nodes on its network, right? Once that transaction is confirmed to be legitimate, right, you cluster those blocks. Now once the blocks are created, they're chained together with the history of all the other transactions on that chain, and that transaction is complete. So like something like Bitcoin, it might take 12 minutes for a new block to get added to the blockchain, or a new Bitcoin to be added to the chain every 10 minutes, right? So typically, people have fractions of Bitcoins in terms of how they evaluate something. So
And we're talking like fine decimal, like dozen zeros
like
after the decimal point.
0.736 units of block,
Or even more than that.
of-
Like the stuff I'm getting
yeah.
paid for mining Ethereum is, I think I'm like 10 spots
Yeah.
deep or something
Yeah.
like that after the decimal point. So blockchain is a database that's decentralized, where in crypto blocks are added and it's time stamped, and it can't be messed with, right? But
Right.
how does this come into play for someone who's like tracking inventory, or someone running a business?
So obviously, this has applications in many different industries besides crypto. Companies like IBM, all right, they're already using this technology to perform supply chain tracing of stuff like seafood. So I'll give you an example, a real world example, right?
Okay.
So
Yeah.
using a blockchain based database, you got a scallop fisherman out in New England, right? He's got his
Yeah, okay.
he's got his trawler with the nets, right? And he's out on the coast of Cape Cod, right? And he casts his net and he brings in a whole mess of scallops, right? Now, the location of where that net was cast and the scallops were caught is recorded on that initial transaction. Then he records what kind of scallop it is with a grading process, a small, medium, large, is a jumbo, whatever. He takes photograph and video of what he's doing. He puts the scallop in an ice box. Okay, the box of those things just gets brought ashore to a port. They process it and package it. They ship it out to a distributor where there's a refrigerated warehouse, and maybe the box of those scallops get loaded on the trucks. They get sent to your supermarket or the chain distribution center, and then it gets trucked out. And the guy in your supermarket takes the scallops out of the crate and puts it up for sale. Or maybe these scallops go to your food distributor. It goes to your local seafood restaurant, and he cooks it for you and you eat it. Right? Now,
Yeah.
if anything goes wrong with that scallop, or even you as a consumer want to know where it came from, that bag from that box that you bought it on has a serial number, and it can be traced all the way back to that moment in the water where that guy pulls it out of the water in Cape Cod. Okay, so IBM built a system specifically for tracking this and for doing this, right? And companies like Walmart are using it for stuff like produce tracking, right? So they built one for leafy greens, for lettuces and spinach, right? Now you're wondering, why the hell do you need this for leafy greens and lettuce and spinach? Well, in the last 10 years, we've been seeing these kind of vegetables become contaminated with
Yeah.
E. coli and other pathogens. So they want to be able to know where this bag of green stuff you bought comes from, and which field and from which farm in California, et cetera. They want to be able to do a very quick traceability on that stuff. So
So
when
it's
you, yeah,
it's a more efficient way of tracking it than instead of the scallop fisherman entering it in an Excel spreadsheet and that data having to get transmitted somewhere else. Everything that goes in this example onto the same blockchain and is quicker to reference. Am I understanding?
it's quicker
you
to
right?
reference, but it's authentic because of the time stamping and the fact that it's indelible. It can't be changed, right? So
Right.
they're
Okay.
non-changeable records, and they're true because of the way of the system's architecture. The system timestamps it so that it can't
And
be
it's been
altered, right?
verified and yeah, you can't alter it. Okay. That makes
Right.
sense.
So they're already talking about using this, right, for COVID-19 vaccine passports, right?
Okay.
So just like with the scallops in New England, you have a vaccine. It's manufactured at a pharmaceutical plant. The specific manufacturing run is recorded as a batch of where you made 100 gallons of this stuff. That's the batch, right? That batch is dispensed into vials, right? Each vial has a serial number. It goes in a box, has a lot number with other vials in it. The box is gone onto the truck. Maybe it goes to a pharmaceutical distributor. Maybe it's shipped to a hospital network. Maybe it's shipped to your pharmacy, your local Walgreens or something, or a CVS. The person at the hospital or the CVS opens the boxes up, opens the vial, distributes individual doses into patients, right? Now that
Yeah.
dose, which is time stamped, right, that can be recorded into that patient's record. Which vaccine they got, when, and where. You would want this kind of traceability with stuff like pharmaceuticals, medications you get at the drugstore as well, just the regular stuff that you buy. Also, they're looking at. And, that record cannot be altered because of the encrypted transactional nature of how blockchain actually works, right? And
Yeah.
there's other industries that they want to do this for: insurance, mortgages, and things like banking, where you need to have that end-to-end record of something, and then multiple parties are involved. Now, even stuff like voting systems. So when blockchains are used in this sort of establishment of trust, right, multi-party trust type of transaction, where more than one party may have to authenticate that block before something else can happen next in the workflow, these are referred to as smart ledgers, or they call them also distributed ledgers. And there's several highly regulated industries that are already looking into blockchain for this sort of application.
Yeah, okay. So this all makes sense now, at least a lot more sense than it did before we started doing this.
Right.
So each block is a transaction; it can't be altered once it's on the chain, and it makes it easier to trace stuff. But what does this have to do with crypto and Bitcoin and all the other hot commodities there are right
Right.
now?
Right. So cryptocurrencies obviously use blockchain, to establish that indelible record that each unit of currency exists, that they're unique, and they cannot be altered after they're created, right? We have to think of money almost as like a physical object, a physical coin, right? You don't want to
Yeah.
change a coin after it's been minted, right? Then it wouldn't be money, right? So I'm not an expert on monetary systems. I don't even want to pretend to be one on TV, right? But for the balance of human history, right, money has been an abstract concept. It's something that's exchanged for goods and services, right? Now, typically money has a value, right, because it's backed by something of value and the overall demand for that thing, right? So, for example, a country's output in goods and services is traded with the goods and services of other countries, right? And then you have a deficit or a surplus in that case, so what you trade versus what you pull in, right? So the monetary value of, say, also what someone does for a living is also valued against what someone else does based on demand and scarcity, right? So a ditch digger
Sure.
is going to get paid less than a doctor because of the value of the education the doctor achieved and invested in. A 1 kilogram lobster is going to cost more than a kilogram of rice, because of the level of effort and the resources it took to produce and harvest those two different things on a relative basis, right? Right now, that all sounds extremely existential, and it becomes a very deep conversation when you start to explore, monetary systems and capitalist theory and stuff like that. Look, I was an econ minor in college. You could spend a whole lifetime, discussing what is money and and all that. But
Right. Yeah. There's some conversations to be had there.
right, but crypto, right, cryptocurrency as it exists today, it's valued on something completely different, right? Which is the computational power of the network that produces it, right? Now, this concept, as we discussed before, is known as mining, right? So mining
Yeah.
is it's achieved by running a special program on your computer. It runs through a series of complex equations until that result, right, yields a block that's recorded as a fractional unit of cryptocurrency, right? So it's crazy, right? So there's some gotchas here, right? So people have a lot of computational resources. They can potentially and disproportionately mine an awful lot of cryptocurrency, and they can
Yeah.
disproportionately become the largest players, the biggest fish in the pond, right, on a cryptocurrency network, and they can potentially control it for short periods of time. They can prevent new transactions from getting confirmations, which in turn halts payments between some or all the users. They might also be able to reverse transactions that were completed while they were in control of these networks, meaning they could double spend the coins. Now, fortunately, there are controls built into these networks that prevent these types of attacks from being permanent types of attacks, right? No one can potentially permanently control a cryptocurrency system. They call these 51% attacks, right? Now, this
Yep.
happens when you have
51%.
a malicious actor that has a large amount of computational power, right? They could potentially temporarily control a cryptocurrency network. Now, we've seen clusters of huge mining farms, right, that are built in different parts of the world where large numbers of bad guys reside. China, North Korea, Russia, Eastern Europe, places like that. Now, normally you're going to need a pretty decent rig to run a mining node, right, dedicated to the production of
Sure.
cryptocurrency, right?
Yeah.
I mean, the guys who do this professionally, these are powerful workstation grade PCs with powerful GPU cards, right? And they're being used for accelerating the compute process. But what we've also seen, right, and this is where we get to the dark side of stuff, but we've also seen these miner programs, they're being used as secondary malware payloads, right? So your
Yeah.
computer
I've heard about this. It's crazy.
could end up running one in the background as a virus, and you might not even know it. Now, your mom's, $500 PC she bought at Costco. It may not be a $4,000 gaming workstation that can chew out bitcoins or Ethereum at a serious clip, but if you infect 10,000 of those mom PCs, right, you can get some serious coins generated. So
Sure.
that's why cryptocurrency has this seedy element associated with it. Not to mention that it's become tender for selling stuff like drugs, weapons, and who knows
Yeah.
what,
Yeah.
because it's a
On
totally
the dark web.
anonymous. It's a totally anonymous way of exchanging something that has some intrinsic value. So now, naturally, it takes a lot of power to run a workstation like this, and power requires fuel. Okay,
Right.
the world is still mostly reliant on fossil fuel power generation. So it's not a particularly green way of creating things of value, which brings us
No.
to Tesla and
And
Elon
Elon
Musk.
Musk.
Yep,
Yeah,
yep, yep.
yeah. So about the CD element comment, yeah, I was showing my wife last night, what the projected revenue is for these two rigs I have set up over the last couple of days, going out over a year, and she looked at me and it was like, "This feels very illegal." It's
Yeah,
not. It's completely legal, but it's just the concept of turning on a computer, loading a program onto it, and letting it just run at full blast on the GPU 24 hours a day, and then having money at the end of the day for that, it feels very, very, sketchy, to say the least.
yeah,
But the thing I'm trying to wrap my head around is Tesla buying $1.5 billion worth of
yes,
Bitcoin. That
right.
is, I think it's the largest transaction ever for Bitcoin, I believe.
Mm-hmm.
You'll have to double check me on that. But the fact that Tesla now owns and is a major stakeholder in Bitcoin, as far as a single entity owning Bitcoin, is I can't wrap
Yeah,
my head around it, to be honest with you. And the fact that Elon Musk said that eventually people will be able to buy their Tesla directly with Bitcoin,
yeah,
it just, I have so many questions. Like, okay, if it's a direct Bitcoin to Bitcoin transaction, there's no taxes involved. how does the government keep tabs? Governments are going to want their share, right? Whether
Yeah.
it's the U.S. or it's Europe or wherever, the government's going to want the share of that transaction. How is all of this going to work with a decentralized crypto? I don't know, man. And to your point, mining is not a green
No.
a green hobby, whether it's a hobby or it's what you do for a living, that you use a ton of electricity on the very high end mining rigs,
Yeah.
the
I mean,
ASIC setups.
I'm wondering if Elon's going to take some of those Tesla solar panels and buy a giant, field in Arizona in a desert and start making
Right.
crypto places, with
Yeah,
10,000,
who knows?
100,000 acres of Tesla panels just chewing out, Bitcoins. Um, or we could see nation states. I mean, look, we have agencies like NSA with massive amount of supercomputing capability. We don't know
Sure.
what the nation states are doing as far as running nodes. We don't know where these nodes necessarily who they're owned by. That's the thing; they're completely anonymized, right?
Yeah.
Um, I could certainly understand, why Elon Musk wants to invest in cryptocurrencies like Bitcoin and Dogecoin. Um, as a company, Tesla is only currently profitable, okay, because a large portion of its income comes from the sale of what they call green energy credits. Now,
Yep.
if Tesla's income was solely based on the production of cars and solar panels, the company would be posting hundreds of millions of dollars in losses a year,
Yeah.
right?
These credits are saving them.
Yeah. So the Tesla is able to sell these credits, right? Because in 13 states, okay, any auto manufacturer that wants to sell their car into that state, whether it's a GM or it's a Volkswagen or whoever, that car company must also sell a certain amount of electric or zero emission vehicles, ZEVs, right?
Yep.
If you sell enough electric cars, you're going to get a credit with that state, and that credit has a certain monetary value. But if that automaker doesn't sell ZEVs or doesn't sell enough of them, right? If they have a deficit in terms of these carbon credits, then it's going to buy them from someone that has that credit, right? Um,
Yeah.
Tesla sells a lot of electric cars. In fact, it only sells
Right.
electric cars, right?
Yeah.
So it has a surplus of credits. Now, it has no reason to keep those credits. It could sell them to other automakers. Now, these credits expire. So it's in their best interest to get rid of them, right? Now, Tesla, in the second quarter of 2020 alone, it made $428 million, right? Beating their first quarter sales of $354 million. So it is making a lot of money
Yeah.
on carbon
That's
credits.
just free money at that point for them, right? Because they've already sold the cars. That's just, it's free money. Those credits are going to go to waste if they leave them alone, right? And
It,
so,
it's the government giving them a break. Now,
yeah.
this situation with there being a deficit of credits with other automakers is going to change, right? Because eventually they're all going to be producing lots of electric cars. I mean, Volkswagen already said we're moving 100% electric by a certain date, right? After they had their diesel scandal. And so they're all going to meet their carbon credit quotas eventually, or come very close to meeting their carbon credit quotas. So what that means is Tesla's going to need to find other ways of making money.
Yeah.
It needs to be able to sell more cars and more solar panels, right? So expanding the way that people can pay for cars is critical for Tesla to stay afloat financially, right? And because it's no guarantee they're going to be the number one electric car producer in 5 years. It could be GM. It could be Ford. It could be Nissan. It could be any number of these. It could be VW for all we know. So, and they're not necessarily going to have the most competitive pricing on vehicles either. There's no way. I mean, Tesla's position now, they're number one in electric because they are, but they can't. They're not necessarily going to be able to scale like companies that are 10 times their size. So people want to have avenues to spend their Bitcoin or Dogecoin or Ethereum or whatever, right? I mean, if you have
Yeah.
100,000, if you have $300,000 in Bitcoin, what the hell are you going to spend it on, right? So, I mean, unless you're trying to sell drugs or weapons or something that's illicit, which is why you have to use this type of currency. You're not going to go into your local drugstore, or you're not going to go to McDonald's and with your iPhone and pay a fractional Bitcoin in Apple Pay to get a Big Mac, right? So being a car manufacturer for cryptocurrency millionaires is going to give them an edge, potentially a lifeline in staying profitable, right? They're going to be they're going to be the crypto car company essentially.
Yeah, or I think I checked before we started recording today, and Bitcoin was at like 44,000, almost $45,000, which has gone down a little bit since Tesla announced this massive purchase. So maybe they're viewing it as an investment, hoping that Bitcoin goes up, but it's already skyrocketed as it is, right? It's $45,000 per coin. That is
Yes.
insane. Just the
So
amount of money tied up into it.
you would think that the banks would be jumping into this, right? But what's happening is like big large investment banks like UBS, United Bank of Switzerland, okay, they said it like last week, and then they also had a lot about it over the summer. They're saying that Bitcoin and other cryptocurrencies don't have any intrinsic value. Okay, they're saying it's
Sure.
not legal tender. The whole thing could come crashing down at any moment, and it's an underworld scummy sort of thing. They don't want anything to do with it. They don't want, and they've been telling their clients, don't diversify with cryptocurrency and stay the hell away from it. The other thing that they pointed out very recently is that the nature of Bitcoin always has a fixed supply, meaning that the currency supply of Bitcoin, right, cannot be restricted, right, as a nation state would do if the demand for a currency goes down, like as with real money, right? So like the United States decides there shouldn't be X number of dollars in the ecosystem, it pulls them, right? So you have this concept of what we have in economics of the M1, M2, where you have a certain amount of cashes in the system versus a certain other types of money. There, and when we say other types of money, we're talking about securities and loans and things like that, things
Sure.
that are not necessarily hard cash, right? That are in the system. So they're saying that not being able to restrict the flow of Bitcoin or to be able to restrict the overall supply, right? I mean, if there's 18 million Bitcoins out in circulation, you can't suddenly have 12 million Bitcoins out in
Yeah, you
circulation
can't
because
hold 6 million, set 6 million aside and just, to
yeah.
manipulate the market, so to speak.
Right. So that's a serious flaw and could eventually cause the whole thing to collapse. Now, for now, Tesla's on the fringe. And if we see lots of
Yeah.
companies accept Bitcoin and other cryptos as a method of payment, it's effectively on its own right now
Yeah.
as
Yeah.
a big company, right?
It'll be interesting to see because Tesla is a public company. So the reason this came about is they had to include it in their SEC filings that they made this purchase. So it'll be interesting to see as more earnings are reported and more filings come out, how many other companies follow Tesla. That's something to watch for over the coming weeks and months. And then it's also, I'm very curious, SpaceX is a private company, right? How
They
much
are.
do they own? How much do they own? Tesla's, Musk is, dabbling with all of his companies here, not just Tesla. So there's a lot of questions still to be answered, but I think you did a pretty outstanding job today, Perlow. You did really good making this very, very complicated topic and
Yeah,
concept.
and I oversimplified it. So if we have crypto and Bitcoin, crypto and if we got
Blockchain.
if we got my brain is hurt just discussing this. If we got
It's
crypto
good.
and
It's good enough.
blockchain wonks, I work with a whole bunch of crypto and blockchain, Justin. I'm gonna get dinged on if I got anything seriously wrong here, but it's I think that this is an interesting topic. Certainly, blockchain I think has tremendous potential, right? So I don't think we should be mixing. We should, if anybody actually says that talks about blockchain in a negative way, they're really thinking about cryptocurrency. You
Yeah.
do have all these examples to talk about. Well, it could be used for vax. For vax tracing. If you go to the seafood restaurant, there's a good chance that those scallops that you ate for dinner were traced through a blockchain-based system. So, or when you're buying spinach at the supermarket, your supermarket chain, might have been using that system to trace where that spinach came from, where in Mexico it
Yeah.
was, So it's a technology that is increasing in usage. I think we're going to see a lot more over the next 5 or 10 years. More regulated, more conventional industries using it for different sorts of things. But like I said, cryptocurrency. I don't have it as part of my portfolio. I don't know. Maybe I'll throw a computer at it just to play games with it. But I still think it's in the realm of the weird. Uh,
Right. Yeah.
you know,
So here's my story. In college, I took a programming class on how to make iPhone apps. This was actually after college. I just took it randomly one summer
right.
because I wanted to get my toes wet and kind of understand the basic approach to making iPhone apps. And so we had a lab set up where we got partnered with someone, and that was our developer partner for the summer. And we had to make an app and what else. But so talking with my lab partner one day, he logs on and he checks something and he says, I don't remember. It was like 24 Bitcoins or something like that. And he'd been mining Bitcoins for a while at that point at his house.
Oh,
He had like
wow.
4 computers set up mining Bitcoins. And so we had this long talk about Bitcoin. And I left that conversation thinking he was trying to convince me to mine Bitcoin. And this was back when they were worth just a few bucks. They weren't worth much at all. And so I walked away thinking there's no way that thing's going to take off. He's wasting a lot because he was losing money in electricity at that point, but he was
Oh,
convinced in
yeah.
the future it would pay off. And a year ago, I saw him on the local news as a multimillionaire kid in his 20s who had made all of his money, made his fortune on Bitcoin, and was going
Wow.
around doing all these nerdy presentations about it and stuff. So he was right. I was wrong. And, I'm going to dabble for a little bit just to see if something else takes off. So
Sure.
that's my final thought is this stuff is fascinating to me. I need to learn a lot more about it. I definitely learned a lot more today from you, Jason, and I appreciate that. So thank you.
No problem.
So I'm Jason Cipriani,
And I'm Jason Perlow.
and this is Jason Squared. Thanks for listening. Thanks for watching. And make sure to check out more of our work at zdnet.com.